Hello, and welcome to the P-Card Log walkthrough video part 2. In this video, we will be covering how to properly fill out the P-Card log, how to record different types of transactions, such as in-store transactions, transactions where items or services are received at the college, tax-exempt transactions, returns where money is credited back to you, and the last item we will be covering is how to print your P-Card log properly once you are finished. If at any time during this video you have any questions or need any help, please email the Procure to Pay department at p2p@pierce.ctc.edu. First, we will take a look at the new P-Card log. For this video, we will only be covering the section to the left, over here. We will not be covering chart string transfers in this video. Please watch the P-Card log walkthrough video part 3 to see how this section of the log is filled out. Once your receipts are in order and you've accounted for any inconsistencies between your receipts and your statement, go ahead and open up the P-Card template. The first entry we are going to make will be the billing cycle month, year, date. You can find this date on your statement in the upper right-hand corner. This is an example of January's billing cycle. The last date of the billing cycle is January 27th. But on your P-Card log, we're just going to put the month and year, January 2020. I always end the date off with an apostrophe because it keeps it in that format. Before we begin to record specific transactions, let's look at the first 4 columns of the P-Card log. The 4 columns are the posting date, the activity date, the vendor name, and the items purchased. The posting date is the date that the transaction is posted to the bank. This date can be found on the bank statement here. The activity date is the date you made the transaction. This date can be found on the receipt. The next column is the vendor name. This is simply the vendor name on the receipt. Following the vendor name is the items purchased column. This is going to be a description of what was purchased. If you bought 1 to 5 items, go ahead and list out what those items were. However, if you bought more than 5 items, just give the overall purchase a good description, but avoid being vague or too general. Stay away from words like miscellaneous or just putting the word supplies. So now that we've discussed how to record and describe our purchases, let's talk how to record different types of transactions. The first type of transaction we're going to look at is an in-store transaction. In-store transactions would be any time you go to the location of the vendor and receive goods or services. To show an example of how to record an in-store purchase, I have an example receipt from Lowe's Hardware. On the log, I'm going to enter January 6th as the posting date. Then I'm going to enter January 3rd as the activity date. Next, I'm going to put the vendor name, Lowe's Hardware, as stated on my receipt and my bank statement. Lastly, I'm going to enter the items purchased, which was a 5-gallon bucket, a 2-gallon bucket, and painter's tape. The next column, column G, asks if the purchase was received at the vendor location. Because I went to the hardware store and received the items there, I'm going to use the drop-down arrow and put yes. The next column, column H, says, if yes, dollar total here. So since I put yes, I'm going to put my whole receipt total of $40.36 in this blue column, column H, that says in-store dollar total. This concludes how to record an in-store transaction. The next type of transaction we're going to look at are transactions where we received goods at Pierce College. This would include an item shipped to the college or any digital good, document, or transfer of data. Before we get into recording this type of transaction, let's look at the P-Card log and the columns we're going to fill in. Instead of putting the dollar total in column H for in-store transactions, we're going to skip column H and look at columns I through K. These columns are subtotal, shipping, and tax paid. The reason why we would separate these numbers out is so that we can verify that we paid the correct sales tax. This is due to something called destination tax. Destination tax is the sales tax rate of the destination of the product or service. Since Pierce College is the shipping destination of all the items we buy, the tax rate we are charged needs to match the tax rate your campus is located on. The finance department will always keep the college informed on current tax rates, and you can find the tax rate of your campus located in the lower left corner of the P-card log. When we enter the subtotal, shipping, and the tax into the P-card log, it is checked with an Excel formula that compares the tax you paid with the tax that you should have paid based on the tax rate written in column L, titled Tax Rate. It is important to always keep the tax rate in column L. Never delete it or change it unless you've been directed to do so. If you paid the correct tax, a 0 or dash will appear in column M, which is titled Use Tax. Use tax is the tax we should have paid at the time of the transaction but didn't. If you didn't pay the correct tax, the tax we still owe to the Washington State Department of Revenue will appear in the Use Tax column, column M. It is important to remember this column does not affect the overall reconciliation of your receipts or statement. This column is simply notifying the Finance Department that we owe the Department of Revenue more tax money for this transaction. Now that we've discussed how these columns on the P-card log work, let's enter a sample receipt. This is a receipt from the Pacific Northwest Theater Association, or PNTA. On the log, I'm going to enter January 6th for the posting date. Then I'm going to add January 3rd for the activity date. Next, I'm going to put the vendor name PNTA as stated on my receipt and my bank statement. Lastly, I'm going to enter a description of the purchase as Theater Lighting's Gel and Effects. The next column, column G, asks if the purchase was received at the vendor location. Because I had these items shipped to the college, I'm going to use the drop-down arrow and put no. I'm going to skip column H and go over to columns I through K, where it says at the top, if no, skip the blue column, column H, and break out the receipt here. The subtotal of my receipt is $623.11. Now this receipt shows a discount of $31.16, so I'm going to do a little side math and subtract that. This gives me a new subtotal of $591.95, and I'm going to put this as my new subtotal. I was not charged any shipping, so I'm going to put 0 under shipping, and I paid $58.61 in tax. As soon as I click out of the box, it will calculate if I owe use tax. And it looks like we don't owe any use tax for this transaction. As a reconciler, I do want to stress again, you don't have to worry about use tax. Just be aware that the column calculates itself and it will be an expense that comes from your budget later on when we do pay the Department of Revenue. Now that my receipt is entered, you will see that it also totals over in column Y. This total should match your receipt. If it doesn't, check for keystroke errors. And this concludes how to record transactions where goods are received at the college. Next, we will discuss how to record tax-exempt transactions. It is important to note that Pierce College pays sales tax. We are not a sales tax exempt agency, but there are types of purchases that are tax exempt. These purchases are generally registration fees to conferences, membership dues, a newspaper subscription, clinic drugs, raw food ingredients, and some services. For a full list of tax-exempt items and services, please visit the Department of Revenue's website at dor.wa.gov, or find the link at the Procure to Pay webpage on the Pierce College intranet. Let's take a look at a sample receipt for a tax-exempt purchase. The sample receipt is for an institutional membership with the National Association of Educational Procurement. The posting date on the statement is January 22nd. The activity date, which is shown on the paid invoice here, shows January 21st. The vendor name is the National Association for Educational Procurement. The item purchased would be described as a membership fee for the purchasing department. In column G, it asks if it was received at the vendor location. I'm going to put no. Then, since I put no, I'm going to follow the instructions that say if no, skip the blue column, which is column H, and I'm going to go all the way over to the tax exempt column, column N. Here, I'm going to put the membership total of $890. You will see that the total is showing over in column Y. If by chance you make a purchase and half of it is for tax-exempt items and half of it is not tax-exempt items, then you would record this transaction by breaking out the taxable items and putting them in the subtotal column, recording the shipping and tax as usual, and then take the items that are tax-exempt, add them together, and enter them into the tax-exempt column. Your receipt total should end up matching the total that is calculated on your P-card log. Should you need any help with this, please contact the Procure to Pay department. You'll notice that when you move your cursor to the tax-exempt column, a pop-up reminder shows a brief description of tax exemptions to help you determine if your purchase qualifies. 99% of the things that you buy on your P-card are probably taxable. So again, if you have any questions about tax exemptions, please visit the Department of Revenue's website or email the Procure to Pay department for assistance. Now let's talk about how to record credits. Credit card credits happen when you are reimbursed for a previous charge. In all of these cases, you will see a CR next to the transaction on your credit card statement. It is important to show all credits on the P-card log. If something is purchased and returned in the same month, it doesn't magically cancel itself out. We still have to show a record of all money being expensed and returned as shown on the bank statement. When recording a credit, you'll mirror how you recorded the expense, but instead you'll enter it as a negative amount. You can do this by either putting the subtraction symbol in front of the amount or place the number between parentheses, like this. This is an example of an in-store credit. This would be an example of a shipped credit. And this is an example of a tax-exempt credit. Now that we've covered the different ways to record different types of transactions, let's look at the overall log. You'll notice that the transaction amounts have totaled at the bottom of the page. Please verify that these match your statement when you're finished. If the totals don't match, there is a problem and you need to check for keystroke errors or inconsistencies between your receipts and the statement. You'll also notice that the use tax column totals at the bottom as well. This will be the total amount of use tax that will be charged to your default account after your log has been submitted. If you have more transactions to record, you can continue to record on the second tab, page 2. The total from page 1 will carry over. With the exception of adding any transfers to your P-card log, which we will cover in the P-card log walkthrough video part 3, at this point your log would be considered complete, and it is time to print it out. If you print your P-card log and some of the columns have pushed over onto a second page, you can fix this by going to File, Print, click on the Custom Scaling tab, and then select Fit Sheet on one page. Please make sure you print one-sided. Double-sided printing can cause approvers or auditors to miss the other half of your reconciliation. Now that you know how to record transactions, please watch the P-card log walkthrough video part 3, where we will cover chart string budget codes and how to transfer transactions. If you have any questions about the information presented in this video, please use the other walkthrough videos as a resource or email the Procure to Pay department at p2p@pierce.ctc.edu. Thank you so much.